Hello, listeners. I'm your host, Jayasree, and you're listening to TALRadio, powered by Touch a Life Foundation. Welcome to Leadership for Life with Kyra Cavanaugh, President of 15B Wellbeing, a company dedicated towards creating learning experiences for leading corporations, workplaces, teams, groups, and individuals, because they believe that no one should sacrifice well-being for performance. In today's interview, we are going to talk about vulnerability. Okay, so what is vulnerability and why are we talking about it when we're talking about leadership? Because Kyra says that vulnerability is the key to connection in leadership. So without any further ado, let's welcome Kyra onto our show. Hello, Kyra. Welcome back on TALRadio.
Thank you so much. Hello, Jayasree, and hello, everyone. We're so happy to be with you today to talk about vulnerability.
Yes, of course. I'm really excited because often being vulnerable is judged, and people fear that a lot. When people who fear judgments actually try and hide their, problems or the side that they don't want to show people very consciously. And I feel I was actually impressed by your statement when you say vulnerability is the key to connection. That actually rings a bell. It makes a lot of sense to say that. So let's reveal what it actually means today. So my first question to you: what does it mean for vulnerability to be the key of connection in leadership?
Thank you. And I'm so excited to dive into this topic today. What does it mean? It means when we are willing to share, exactly as you said, Jayasree, when we're willing to share who we are, when we're willing to be open and honest about how we're feeling, about the challenges that we're facing, to tell stories about our own lives, then we come across as relatable. People can process their own experience at work and the family and the community through the lens of the leader and understand that life can be challenging. There are ups and downs. Even someone who's a leader can still struggle and can still succeed. And so the key to leadership being vulnerability has to do with understanding as a leader the old-fashioned way of thinking about leadership as command and control. I'm the leader, I'm in charge, so I will tell you what to do without disclosing what I'm thinking or feeling. I'm going to dictate to you. It's a very traditional way of thinking about leadership. So the reason that I say that it's the key to leadership today actually has to do with a very personal story on my own leadership journey that I'd be happy to share with you as we spend some time together today.
Definitely. I'm looking forward to that. And my next question to you is, how can a leader demonstrate vulnerability while maintaining authority and respect?
So here comes my story. So I thought that being a good leader was to be, as I said, strong and in control and to convey confidence. And I had a big moment of awareness and learning in my own leadership journey when my team came to me and said, Kyra, we can sense that while you say one thing, we can sense that something else is going on. And one of my team members, I'll never forget this, said, Kyra, when you show that you're vulnerable, that you're worried, that you're fearful, that you're excited, that you're hopeful, then when we feel those feelings, when we worry or when we're fearful or when we're excited and see the possibility, we know that we're in alignment with you. So how can you demonstrate vulnerability? By taking the risk to actually share what you're thinking, what you're feeling, what your experience is, trusting that the people that you're leading will see themselves in you and in your story, and then create a deeper connection.
Beautiful. I love that story. And I really love the fact that you have shared this with us, and you have mentioned that this has happened because of one of the team member of yours being said, and it takes immense humility to accept that advice from a team member. And I am glad about what you have just said, and I'm really proud of what you did there.
Thank you. It was hard. It was
Wonderful.
very hard. Yeah.
Yeah. I really can sense that. And thank you for sharing again. So, my next question follows. Why is it important for leaders to show vulnerability in building meaningful connections with their team members? Now, an extension to your story again.
Yes, yes. So I misunderstood that sense of meaningful connection. I thought almost like the way a parent would, or maybe a partner, a life partner, or a spouse would. I thought by taking away their hurt, by protecting them from the hopes and fears and dreams and worries that I was carrying, I thought that was the way we would make connection. Because if I only shared the positive, who doesn't want to feel positive? Then they'll feel good about me as a leader because we all feel positive. Well, that is not the human experience. And we can sense, I don't know if you've ever had this experience where you'll come into connection or contact with someone and you can just feel or sense something is off or something's wrong, or you know that you're not sure you want to trust that individual. And as I do that, I don't know if you can see my hands, but I'm sort of pushing away. We have a sense. And when what we sense from a leader and what we experience, what we hear them saying, is in tension, is dissonant, is not in alignment, that does not create meaningful connection. That creates a sense of distrust. Why is Kyra saying that everything's okay, but I can sense from her that it isn't? That blocks connection. And so being vulnerable, and we'll talk about the extent of that vulnerability and what that looks like and sounds like, it might feel like, but to be vulnerable is to say, I want to come into connection with you. I want you to know that your experience is not only yours. That together we can be human beings, we could be workers, we could be family members, and recognize that shared human experience. That's what leadership is.
Beautifully said. Wonderfully said. And having said this, there are a lot of misconceptions, right? From what you said, also, we can draw this kind of a conclusion that, there are a lot of misconceptions about vulnerability, especially in leadership. So, what are those common misconceptions about vulnerability in leadership, and how can they be addressed?
So, one I would say is hierarchy. I think it's easy for us to think of a leader as the person in power, power over someone else. So we could go back to parenting again. I'm the leader of the family because I'm older and I'm wiser, and I get a say. I get to tell you how it's going to be. So that's one misconception, this idea that leadership comes with a sense of hierarchical power. Another is that sense of a leader being in an ivory tower, protected from the common people, protected from like a king in a castle with a moat and walls and fortresses, and I am in charge. No one can possibly imagine what it's like to be me, right? So we can literally wall ourselves off from that connection with other people. And the third one I would say is that we need to know all the answers. The sense that as a leader, I am supposed to know. I am supposed to be definitive, directive, and clear. And if I don't feel that way, I should, as a good leader, pretend that I actually am hopeful or that I actually am clear. And those three things then can block that connection, can keep us separate and distant and other from the people that we're leading. So those misconceptions can be very damaging.
Pretty clear, definitely. And it gives a lot of clarity on why people kind of hide their true intentions with the fear of being judged and why it is not worth it.
It's not. It's not.
Definitely. Wonderful. So, my next question to you. How does vulnerability contribute to a positive organizational culture and employee engagement?
So, following on then, once I start to recognize where those blind spots are for me as a leader, now I can start to question, well, how do I break those down? If I don't want to be in the fortress or the ivory tower, if I literally do not know the answers, if I feel like I am supposed to be the ruler as a leader, that disconnection happens. And the culture is going to reflect that, right? A sense of disconnection, a sense of following because of the obligation. So when we start to break that down, now we start to focus on connection. It's no longer about me as a leader knowing, it's about me as a leader asking. Well, can you feel the shift in energy from I have to know and tell and dictate to I have to be aware and ask and listen? Ooh, you can feel how the culture will shift and change as a result. It also starts to flatten. If I recognize I actually don't know the answer, or I have an idea about the direction that I think we should go, or I feel very strongly about the direction I should go, but I want to ask first. I want to build support. And I want to socialize and listen to what everybody else might know from their own experience, from their background, from the way they process and think about information, about the experiences that they've had professionally and personally. Now, oh my gosh, this great strategy and idea that I had, I get the chills. It just got so much better because as a leader, I let go of my need to know and dictate. Now I get to learn and we get to improve and collaborate on these strategies. So hopefully you can see through those couple of examples how the energy in the room, the energy of the culture, the way that employees show up excited and ready to be contributing, feeling seen and heard. Hopefully you can feel that shift in energy. And that's when leadership becomes so much more enjoyable. And it becomes so much more fun to be a family or to be of service to your community and work together in collaboration. So I hope that you can see that and feel that and hear that as I create or convey that contrast.
Absolutely. And now tell me about the other side of it. Okay. So we understood about vulnerability being contributing towards this positive organizational structure. But in what ways can a leader create a safe environment for his team members to express vulnerability?
So once you've opened yourself up as a leader, you're starting to model vulnerability. So think about if you worked with somebody, and I know I'm using a lot of work examples, but this applies in every aspect of our lives. So let's imagine that you worked for someone who never asked your opinion, and now they're starting to ask your opinion. You might be hesitant at first to share that because you don't know if it's safe. You don't know if you can trust that person. You don't have a lot of lived experience in this new exchange of ideas and information. So the first thing that we do as a leader is we demonstrate a shift in our own behavior. That's vulnerability. Now we come into this conversation. How are you showing up? Are you defensive? Are you hunched over? Are you furrowing your brow? Are you looking at your phone or your computer? Are you half paying attention? You ask the question because you feel like you're supposed to, but you're not really engaged in the answer. Again, what's going to happen? People are going to sense that. People do what, they act based on how they feel, not based on what you're telling them they should do. So in a psychologically safe space where vulnerability is valued, we ask the question as a leader and we sit back and listen, attentive, open-chested, shoulders back and down. We use eye contact. We don't convey distraction. We smile. We show interest. We ask follow-up questions. We listen. That starts to build trust and safety in this dialogue, in this organization, in this team. And now, oh my goodness, now I've shared something with my leader and nothing bad happened. This is key because as we're practicing vulnerability, what's in the back of our mind? Risk, 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 risk. And so we're only going to be as vulnerable as it feels safe to be. So it takes a process of experimentation for a while. So as a leader, you convey that someone can disagree with you and nothing bad is going to happen to them. You can give people the opportunity to participate, but not force them to participate. And as they begin to trust the process, they open up more and more and more. So we have to be aware of our own body language. We have to model that behavior. And we really have to show that the risk is very low for retribution when other people on the team are being vulnerable. And then through that virtuous cycle, people begin to learn as a team, as a culture, as a group, as a family, that it's okay. It's okay if I disagree. It's okay if I have a different idea. It's okay when I have shared and now nothing bad happened. And maybe some good things happened. Maybe the team adopted or the family adopted a suggestion or a shift or a change. And that cumulative experience repeated over and over again is what helps create that safety.
Beautiful. I like the part that you said risk. So I'm going to ask about that now. So what are the potential risks or challenges that can be associated with being vulnerable as a leader? And how can they be mitigated or addressed?
So in Harvard Business Review, I want to say it was almost a decade ago, there was a seminal article on this exact topic. And it was really about how much vulnerability is too much vulnerability when you're a leader. And the researchers had done some science around this idea of, does it actually diminish your leadership standing if you are practicing this vulnerability? Now, that was 10 years ago. There's been so much information, so much research that has been published on this idea of psychological safety. And Dr. Amy Edmondson, who is a Harvard professor and researcher, has done really the pioneering work on creating psychological safety in the workplace. And certainly we can apply that again to any situation, family, community, etc., where we are practicing that leadership. So the idea is that we can be vulnerable in the ways that I've been explaining and demonstrating. We can be vulnerable as leaders, and that can sort of increase our leadership quotient. We can be perceived as even stronger leaders in the ways that I have explained. The caution is to consider what you're being vulnerable about, the extent to which you're sharing your inner world pertains to the topic at hand. So, in the workplace, how much detail are you providing? How much time is it taking? And how is it landing? So how are people perceiving it? So there's this dance that takes place, and it can take some experimentation. Each group of people you're leading has its own personality. Individuals in that team also have their own personalities. And so what might be deemed oversharing or ineffective vulnerability may be different culturally or depending on the work styles and the personalities of the people that you're leading. So my advice to you is to pay attention, to be aware. How is my vulnerability being received? If, for example, you overshare, you share a lot of detail and you share a lot of information that really doesn't necessarily feel relevant, is kind of taking away from the task at hand, that may not be tested and true. If the themes that you're bringing up are consistent, so I'm really not sure what to do in this situation with this client, and you say it once, that may be one thing. If you say it 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 times, every time there's a conflict with a client, then you can start to see how that vulnerability may diminish. If you've got people that are very supportive and everybody really likes to share aspects of their family and their personal life, and maybe that isn't so much a quality for you that you're comfortable with, perhaps that gives you some comfort and you might feel like you're oversharing, but it's very welcome in this environment. So to summarize, the very best thing you can do is to experiment, to try, and then to ask for feedback, to understand what does seem welcome and what is bringing out the best in other people, and where and when is your vulnerability kind of cutting off the connection or creating an environment where your intended interest in creating safety actually may be doing the opposite. So the bottom line is experiment, try, and be open. Be aware in your environment for what is welcome and what may not be. And don't just presume you know, because it can be very uncomfortable to be vulnerable. So you might try and be like thinking, oh, no, I overshared. This isn't good. But if you ask someone, how do you think that was perceived? How did you feel about it? And they give you positive feedback, then you'll actually be able to check what some of your fears may be around vulnerability versus how it was actually received.
Whoa. Pretty deep and pretty insightful content here. I should say this because it has given a beautiful understanding about how you can help yourselves and those around you by uplifting this emotion called vulnerability.
Yes.
Beautiful. I love the way you explain that, Kyra. I truly do.
Thank you.
And for my last question of the day to you, what kind of strategies can leaders use to balance vulnerability with maintaining professional boundaries in their interactions with team members? We spoke about how you can maintain authority and respect. Yes, we did touch this a bit, but then I want you to give certain strategies to help the leaders here.
First of all, recognize that you're a human being. And the people that you're leading are human beings. There's an expression, we're human beings, not human doings. Especially in a work setting, it can be very easy, even in the examples I gave today, to reduce the interaction to being about performance, about the human doing. And that's fine. And it needs to be balanced with remembering that human connection is core. It's key to who we are as we exist, as we walk around, as we work and live on this beautiful planet of ours. So recognize as a leader that vulnerability isn't just about the professional topics and nature of our work in that setting, but that it's also about learning to be vulnerable and disclosing information about yourself. Being vulnerable and being able to say, I'm sorry. Being vulnerable and being able to recognize other people's vulnerability. Being able to create safety in our families, in our communities, at our workplaces, to recognize that not everybody is going to show up all the time being perfect and being productive and being what you expect them to be. Sometimes we're going to have bad days. Sometimes we're going to have take it slow days. And so you asked for strategies. The first one is to really recognize as a leader, you're not just leading around the doing, you're leading around the human beings. Secondly, have a process in place where you're checking yourself and you're getting feedback from other people about the level of vulnerability you're providing. So sometimes we have our own biases. So only looking at our performance ourselves without asking other people isn't going to give us all the data points we need. On a regular basis, invite feedback from others. Third strategy, what are we doing well as a team, as a family, as a community? What are we doing well? Where are there opportunities to get better, to serve more, to love more fiercely? How can we be more supportive? It's vulnerable to ask questions about your leadership. It's vulnerable to open up conversation and potentially criticism around the culture of your family, your workplace, your community. So be open and have a ritual, a regular process, discipline around that feedback loop. And then lastly, celebrate. Celebrate when people have taken a risk. Celebrate that vulnerability. Thank people for sharing, being open and honest about their experience. Thank them for being open and honest about feedback for you as a leader. And lastly, remember you're a work in progress. We are all working on our leadership abilities every day that we live and breathe here. And so recognize that in the process of building vulnerability into your leadership style, that there may be days that you don't rise to the occasion in the way that it feels really easy on other days. Pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and try again. This is a long-term set of skills that you can build. And when you do, the potential for connection and the potential for increased collaboration and performance improves dramatically. Thank you so much for bringing up this very, very special topic, like you said, that's near and dear to my heart today, Jayasree.
Absolutely. I should thank you because this is a very, very key concept that's often overlooked and that's often underrated, not really bothered about, spoken about. So I think it was really essential for us to pick this topic and talk about it. And I would love to say this once again. I loved your statement. Vulnerability is the key to connection, not just in leadership, but in every phase of life and in every role that you are in. Um, it's absolutely true. It holds true. So thank you so much, Kyra. It was great talking to you today as well. And I hope our listeners have beautiful takeaways from this conversation. And thank you so much once again for your time and energy.
Thank you so much.
So that was Kyra Cavanaugh for all of you today, and you're listening to TALRadio, powered by Touch a Life Foundation. This is your host, Jayasree, signing off for today. Stay tuned and keep learning.